Hey guys, Kinder here from Franking Out Podcast. So I wanted to do a quick tutorial about my particular workflow, how I work with bad audio, and how I get things done in the podcast editing process. Give you a good starting point of what to actually do when you start editing your own podcast. There's a lot to go over, and there's a lot of this that you may not necessarily have to do. You can do about half of this stuff and still have a better quality podcast than about 90% of the people out there. But there are some keynote things that you should really know about and that will bring your podcast to the next level if you're kind of starting out with podcasting, or even if you're a veteran podcaster that's been doing it for under a year and are not really sure what else to do or don't really know your way around an audio program. So the first thing that you need to do, the first thing you need to understand is what a VST is and how to install one. Just Google install VST plugin for whatever your DAW is. And by the way, your DAW means your audio software that you use. For example, I use Mixcraft. A lot of people use Audacity. Mac users will use GarageBand most likely. Pro Tools, things like that. So Google how to install a VST in your particular DAW. Usually what that entails is downloading a VST file. You can find certain ones free online, and certain ones cost a lot of money, some more than others. And you will take that file and install it into your VST folder for your particular DAW. And once it's in that folder, you should be able to go into your DAW and find a menu, something along these lines. Go down to plugins somewhere. This is for Mixcraft 8, obviously. And you can edit your VST folders, things like that usually. And then you can rescan for any new VST plugins. So things like that. And once you do that, you should find your new VSTs in your actual FX folders or FX list. So we've got some really trashy audio here. The audio is very quiet, and the audio has got a lot of background noise because the person that recorded it used a dynamic microphone with great rejection, but they kind of leaned way back here or had it on their desk, things like that. Basically, poor mic etiquette, poor recording quality, things like that. You're going to come across guests that just have bad audio regardless. You're kind of clicks and pops and just generally bad audio. Background noise is one of the worst things, too. Really crappy audio here. So let's have a listen. Notice how that audio is only peaking about halfway up. It may sound fine listening to it in your own DAW, but later on you're going to notice that it's very, very quiet on the export. And you may have other audio tracks, other mics and things like that are peaking at much higher levels and just not working out right. So of course the first thing you do is bring up your level manually like that. And let's see where we're at basically now. That's a little bit better. It's still not quite perfect, though. We want our audio to kind of stick around that area, and there's a good bit of variance in this person's voice from low to high. So that's where your compression comes in. So I use M compressor, and that's going to be the first thing in my effects chain. This is a free plugin, and you can just Google it. You'll be able to find it. It comes with a whole suite of stuff, M compressor, M equalizer, things like that. Extremely useful. I recommend everybody has a compressor in their arsenal. So what a compressor does. So say you have audio that's got a lot of peaks or is just generally really loud, so you have to bring it down. But then there's like some quiet talking in one part, and then there's some loud talking in another part. Or there's just a couple of loud parts in the whole thing, and you don't feel like going through and editing the whole daggum thing. to get those peaks out. So
Call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice.
you see what's going on here. That white line that was there is the audio level. Let's look at it one more time. So anytime that white line crosses over that red line, that's called your threshold. So you want your threshold around negative 18 decibels or so, depending on where you want your audio to begin losing volume. So you need to put that threshold somewhere around 18. And anytime that your audio crosses over that threshold, your ratio here says, wait, hold up. And for about every 3 point, let's see, I've got my ratio set to 3.15 right now. That's pretty harsh. So for every 3 decibels of sound, it reduces it by 1. You can change that, lower it, raise it, and it reduces it by more or less as it crosses the line to 1 to 1 where there is no reduction. And then you have 20 to 1, which is basically keeping it right at that level. So that basically means that your audio will never go over negative 18 decibels according to.
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
So if I want to lower that even,
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
you see over here on the right what's actually being reduced. That's what's being subtracted over here.
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
And my out is actually a little less than my in. So I'm going to bring it back up to about 18 decibels.
Say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice. Call me daddy.
All right, so we're getting pretty healthy levels now. But we've got a new problem. And I also, by the way, have some gain on that through the compressor, and that basically brings the bottom end up as well. So that instead of having our lows way down here and our highs stopped where we want them, that brings our lows up to where we kind of want to have them in a particular range. So you want to have a little range of where all your audio stays so that people don't have to turn up and down on their stereos every time they listen to your podcast. So make sure your gain is right. Unfortunately, that introduces a new problem, which is actually background noise. Don't worry, it happens. It's going to be there regardless. And even as bad as this background noise is, we're still listening to it a lot louder in our DAW than most people would listening to it on their stereo or something like that. So even if you don't have the tools to fix that, it's not so bad. And you can use certain free tools in order to fix that. In Audacity, there's a tool called Trunicate Noise. And it's all right. It's not great, but it's, not awful either. And what that does is you basically select an area of silence, or what's supposed to be silence, in your audio file, and then you try to get that sound profile and adjust it accordingly. In Mixcraft, you go to Sound and your Audio tab down here and use what's called noise reduction, and then you set your own areas. So you got your noise start and noise end. So you've got your noise start and noise end right here. So what you're going to try to do with those things is find an area of silence. The longer the better, so it has a better profile, and have a listen to it. And then you're going to adjust this until your little slider here for noise reduction until most of your noise is gone. Unfortunately, what that is going to do is introduce what are called artifacts in your audio. So if we turn it way up, our noise is virtually gone, but our audio is screwed. So you got to find a happy medium. There's still a little bit of artifacting there, but that would be perfectly acceptable. And the background noise isn't nearly as bad. It's still there, but it's not nearly as bad as it was. And even with that, we can fix a lot of that noise. But I'm not going to use this little trunnicate noise tool because I have something a bit better. So the next thing we can do is we can either use our noise gate or our denoise option. I recommend putting your denoise in front of your noise gate just because your noise gate works harder and it has a bigger area to work with if you don't put it behind everything in the chain. So I'm using RX Voice Denoise. And what this does, this is a handy little tool you can use here that does basically the same thing that Trunnicate Noise tool does, but way better. It has algorithms that have been developed over time, and there's even an adaptive mode, so you don't have to adjust anything if you don't want to, really. So what this is doing now is gathering a sound profile based on what it's hearing in my recording. So we still got noise, right? So we're going to raise that threshold a little bit and raise our reduction. Since this is such an awful amount of noise, we really have to raise it quite a bit. But there's a lot of noise gone. But how is it affecting our actual audio? Not to worry.
Daddy, in Reinhardt's voice.
Here we go.
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
Virtually no artifacting, even though there's significant background noise reduction, and it's reduced better. Let's listen to that again, bypassed.
That's really good. Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice? That's really good.
With.
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
All right, so now we have a healthy level that's peaking about right where we want it to, and we have great noise reduction going on. So this file is almost saved as it is. The next thing we need to do is start working with our equalization. And that really probably needs to be after denoise because, well, no, it needs to be before denoise because denoise works by adjusting certain EQ parameters. And if it's in adaptive mode, then it'll actually work with it in real time and adjust things as needed. As we adjust this, you're going to have to give your denoise just a second to catch up on things before it adjusts. So the profile that I have here is a very weird curve that I use for my voice at some point occasionally. This is not really what yours needs to look like. Your basic rule of thumb is that you want to have what's called a high pass. So, by the way, this is M equalizer. There are some things that you can do. So you can bypass settings, things like that. Just work with it and learn how to use it. There's tutorials all over the place. So the first thing you're going to want is a high pass filter. Basically what that does is it rolls off the lowest frequencies, so your and takes those out of the picture. So right here, 0 decibels is completely flat. And what you can do is actually adjust it in real time with your audio. You can actually hear what's being reduced as well. Since she is a female, she probably doesn't need much of a low-pass filter. This peak right here is generally not something that's great to do. I think I had it way too high. I'm not sure exactly what was going on in this profile. But generally, you can use a bit of a bass boost on females, just a little bit, and that helps give their voice some presence. With baritone voices, you actually are normally advised to raise their voice in the 500 to 1K hertz range. And, generally that makes things sound a little better, gives them a little more vocal presence, gives them a nice, sweet, sultry voice. But that may or may not work for the voice that you're working with. This is basically an art. EQ is very hard to do properly. I'm still not great at it. I don't know a lot of people that are, but I have a good enough idea of what I should do that I can get it in the ballpark to where it sounds okay. So I'm going to play with these filters a little bit and just listen to the process as I go.
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice? Say call me daddy. Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice? Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt? Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
That's not bad. So we've got a high pass filter for her bass roll off there. We've got a slight boost at about 75 hertz, between 50 and 200 hertz, on her voice to give her a little extra bass, give her a little presence since she is a female. I've actually got a cut where normal presence is because she does have a bit of pitch to her voice, and there are some frequencies there that felt a little unpleasant to me. And right here at about 10K, between 10K and 20K, I've got a slight boost, followed by a low pass filter to cut off the very unpleasant shrill high end of her voice. If I were to reduce that at the top end, we would lose some of her vocal presence. Now, what is this little point right here at just about 5,000 hertz? What that is that's actually a de-esser. That's a very particularly unpleasant frequency that causes all your S's and your really high-pitched, just unpleasant sounds. I'll try to see if I can get a couple of them in here so you can hear exactly what we're looking at.
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice? Can you say call me daddy
Uh-oh.
in Reinhardt's voice? Can you say call me daddy? Good. That's really good. Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice? Say call me daddy. Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
So you notice that's where a lot of the shrill S sounds are, and use that notch to get rid of them. If you have a dedicated de-esser, it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to put that notch at about 5K. And that's really where you want it to be. So you can do this manually, or you can use a de-esser tool. It's up to you. If you do it manually, just know where you're going with it. 5K. Give or take maybe a couple of hertz. But it's generally going to be right there at 5K. Between about 4,800K and 52 or so is where the worst of it is. So once you get your EQ about where you like it, remember, very slight edits to begin with. You can start off flat and just do slight edits over time and then gain yourself an ear for it. Take advice, read up on how to EQ, how to properly do things, and you'll be fine. And probably the last thing in my work chain is going to be my noise gate. After I've done all this stuff, after I've gotten everything set up, I'm going to set up what's called a noise gate. And what that is, it's basically just going to completely eliminate any time that there is silence on the channel according to the parameters I set. We got some bumping there. Wait till we have some silence. Find some silence wherever you can in your audio. Get a baseline. So our baseline is going to be somewhere right around in here. So I'm actually going to raise that a little bit and have a listen. All right, it's peaking just over. So you want to have it as close to it as possible without getting the clips over. And we do have a couple little bumps and things like that. That's fine. Those little bumps and everything, they won't matter much to somebody that doesn't have an ear for podcasts. And it really won't matter a whole lot. You can go in and edit them out if you want, if you have that kind of time. Sometimes I go through and edit out every little thing. Sometimes I just don't care. And it's never really noticeable hugely either way. But you notice now that we've got a lot of that silence gone. But what you need to look out for is you need to make sure that your attack and hold and open and everything sound correct. Basically what that does The attack is how fast it disengages and brings you back up to speed where you will start hearing talking again. A lot of time it's good to have it low. Sometimes it's not. If you got little peaks that are slightly that just come up for just a split piece of a second, then you can raise your attack a little bit to kind of get those out of there and not have to raise your actual ceiling. And your release is going to be how long it sustains producing sound after talking has ended. So you don't want your release to be too low or too high, because if it's too high, then you're going to keep getting noise after the talking ends. If it's too low, it's going to go away immediately and sound unnatural as soon as the talking's over, and you're going to have this weird cut in, cut out with your audio and the background noise.
Call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice.
So you notice I raised the attack just slightly, so I'm having that it engages slightly slower actually, but my release is about 100 milliseconds. So
Did you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
So I still have those natural pauses, enough time in those natural pauses where my noise gate engages and disengages, and it doesn't sound unnatural. And my background noise is not that bad. Now, if I were to turn off my denoise, we get a much better picture of what's going on. But like I said, we want to regate after our denoise on our effects chain. So let's have a listen to it without our denoise.
Can you say call me?
Actually, I forgot. I'm going to have to raise that floor quite a bit. So give or take, there's our floor.
Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice?
So when I add the extra background noise, there is a little bit of a natural come in and come out, but it's not nearly as bad as listening to this the entire time. So if you can't afford to pick up the RX6 voice denoise as part of the isotope kit, or can't find a good solid denoiser that's either cheap enough for you to purchase or completely free — I haven't found any free that work well enough for my purposes yet — then you can use your regate plus your noise ternication tools to make it manageable. To use your noise gate, not regate. That's the brand that I use. But let's get this reset up real quick. And our floor is right around in here.
Can you say call me?
All right. Normally I'd be working with a much larger portion of audio, but this was a very long episode with a lot of people talking, so there's a lot of silence in this. So that's basically how I would mix down a single person's voice in audio for the podcast. Everything else from here is going to be cutting out pieces that you don't need, or reinserting things, inserting audio files, things of that sort. That's going to be your own workflow. But as far as actually preparing my audio, my vocal audio, for being listenable on a podcast, that's going to be basically my workflow, working with those plugins. Everything else is going to be really up to you as far as how you like to do things, how your show is, your format, things of that sort. This is basically the hardest part of editing a podcast, is getting all this stuff right. And once again, the effects chain in order that I use is I first add compression, then equalization, then denoising, then noise gate. And there are some other things that you can use if you need them. Declip, dehum, things like that. And if you want to add certain effects for certain hits, then you can do those things as well. I'm not going to get into that here. Occasionally I like to add some reverb for like big hits, that kind of thing. And really that's about it. So I hope this has been very helpful. I hope everything made sense. If it does, just give me a holler and say, hey, man, thanks. This was Kinder from Fragging Out. Good night.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Can you say call me daddy in Reinhardt's voice? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Can you say "Call me daddy" in Reinhardt's voice?